Welcome to With You Podcast.
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara. And we're back at it from another trip.
Woo!
We're always saying that, but
Yeah.
we just got back last night. We're feeling pretty good, not too jet lagged, but
Yeah. What's that old joke? I just got off the airplane. Boy, my arms are tired.
There you go.
Yeah, that's horrible. that's not even a dad joke.
No, you can't say I got off a plane and my arms are tired. I just flew in.
I just flew in.
Boy, are my arms tired.
Oh, that's it.
Otherwise,
all right.
It doesn't make sense.
No, well, that's usually my jokes. But we did just fly in.
We really just
and
did.
Boy, are my arms tired.
That's not what it should be tired.
No, yeah. I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
It's nothing like recording with jet lag.
Well, and it usually feels like when we come back this way, we came from France.
Yep.
When we come back this way, it's harder to adjust for whatever reason because the plane, you don't have a nighttime. We didn't sleep much at all on the plane. We
watched stuff.
Watched a lot of movies.
And got to play with a baby.
I know.
It was really, that was funny. So we're sitting on the plane and we had a seatmate that she fell asleep and we were watching TV and movies and she woke up and found a baby in our laps.
Well, and why, David?
Well, because I said, what I told her, well, it seems like the flight attendants came by while you're sleeping and asked, anybody want a baby?
But it was our son and daughter-in-law who we were traveling with and our granddaughter who were a few rows ahead of us. And we wanted to be helpful. So we were, saying we'd like to walk her up and down the aisles if she needed to, if she was awake. And she showed up at some point during the flight and we got to have fun with her. But it was funny for our seatmate who was sitting on the other side of me to wake up and just see a baby magically in my lap. Yeah. She was really confused.
So was the flight attendant. He's like, wait, that child was up there.
I think that's the same baby I saw.
Yeah.
In a different row.
Yeah, we're just kidnapping babies on planes.
Oh, let's not perpetuate that story.
No. But it was a fun flight. She did great.
Super fun.
We did great. And we watched tons of things. What did you watch?
I watched Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. It was a cute movie.
Well, that seems appropriate.
Yes. And Leatherheads with George Clooney, the football.
Really?
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
I'd seen that one ages ago, but yeah, I usually need something that's kind of light and I can fall asleep to and wake up and I didn't miss anything.
Yeah. I was watching TV series and I fell asleep off and on but we did have the best lunch.
Yeah, I mean, our last two airline food meals have been not too bad.
I think it was because we were flying to Paris.
Probably. They upped their game.
I had chicken kogavin.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I don't even know what it was, but it was tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a pro tip, the second snack, never eat.
No, you never do. The second one that's breakfast or a mini pizza or whatever.
Yeah, pizza twist.
Not good.
No, it leaves you not feeling great. So there's a pro tip for you. But we had a lot of fun. We were doing some work. And one of the things that happened is we got to sit at coffee shops.
Yeah, a lot.
And it was beautiful, the weather.
Yeah.
And we were sitting at this coffee shop. You found it? Jacob found it.
Yeah, Jacob found it, as he always does, find great spots. Our kids have a knack for finding really good spots.
Yeah, and we just are
beneficiaries.
Yeah, we benefit from it.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is going to be something else. But we were there and we timed it right. It was just a coffee and a roll we were having. And then we noticed a high school let out. Mm-hmm. And there were, 100 kids?
The place flooded with local kids who were coming in to pick up it seemed like their lunch in the middle of their day.
Yeah.
And this is what kind of sparked our topic for today, because we're sitting at a little table enjoying our coffee and watching these teenagers kind of all line up and be getting their sandwiches, their baguettes and their croissants and their pastries. Yeah. I don't know if I said that right, but watching them, we thought, why does this seem weird?
Yeah,
it seems different.
It was different.
Other than it was just a beautiful setting and lively people
and well-dressed teenagers.
Yeah, but then we realized we didn't see a single phone out.
No.
Not a single phone.
And they were chatting.
They were all talking with each other in little groups or duos and
Yeah, and for a long period of time, there wasn't any downtime. There was just a constant interaction that was happening that left us feeling like, what's going on here? There's
yeah,
something different
right.
happening.
Right. And we just realized why does that feel unusual? Because we don't see people just spending a long time conversing without consulting their phones, even ourselves.
Yeah.
We often will, you know, look at our phone to look up something while we're talking or
Yeah, where we're heading next.
yeah, yeah. So that made us think about the lost art of conversation and
Yeah.
how it used to be such an integrated part of life and how, especially post COVID, we feel like we've seen a drop off in especially the younger generation being comfortable with face to face conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I even got uncomfortable. There was one place we were trying to make a train and the restaurant wasn't open because, Americans eat way too early.
Hmm.
And so we go into this restaurant and this madame starts talking to me.
This madame.
Well, I don't know, the French lady. Uh, and so she starts talking to me, and we had probably a 15-minute conversation about how far the train station was and what we should be doing and how we should when we should leave. And she had a plan for our
Yes,
life.
but see, I think the reason you felt uncomfortable with this is because it was very one-sided and instructional. It wasn't a two-way conversation. She wanted to be very
She
helpful,
wanted
which
to be
was very
so
nice.
helpful, and she did say she prefaced it by like, "We're so glad that foreigners are traveling here, and I like foreigners." And she kept on saying that to me.
Yeah.
And where are you from? So there was part of a conversation there, but
Yeah.
then she got really, really helpful for
Yeah.
about 10 minutes, and then you came to see what was going on, and walked away and left me in conversation with her,
I
or
could
left me
see
in
that
instruction with her.
yes, I could see that you were in a pickle of your own doing.
But I think it is a discomfort. Like we have pacing in
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
States and
But
culturally around
everybody
where we are.
has their own pacing, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, like different personalities, different cultures
Yeah.
have their pacing and their distant, like personal distance
Oh,
and
what's
all of
what's
those
personal
things.
distance? What is that? I
You
like.
know when you lose it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Most people let me know where their personal distance is because they'll take a step back away from me.
Uh-huh.
So I
Yeah.
like close talking.
Yeah.
We get really close and talk. So we thought we would think about and talk about the art of conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And why is it being lost? Like, what do you think some of the challenges are? Why is it hard now?
Yeah, I think the first thing I noticed, you brought it up, is phones, digital communication.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
digital communication is so much different than verbal.
And it's
And
replaced a lot of our verbal. Like people get I don't know, feel sort of like assaulted if they get a phone call now. It's like,
yeah,
why are you calling me? Just text.
I know. I think you and I and people older than us are the ones that call. Like if we call our kids,
I still prefer text,
do you?
honestly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like a phone call and we'll just kind of have
Well,
a.
we don't though, like you and I too, we don't
Oh
call
no,
each
we
other and
don't like
have a
talking
long
to each
chat.
other on the
Like
phone. No.
we will do if we're if one of us is traveling and we're not in the same place, we'll FaceTime each other once a day
Yeah.
to catch up. But we're not like
Usually,
long conversation on the phone
no.
with each other
It's
people.
it's usually like 11 p.m. my time, and you're in the Target parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, about every conversation we've had in FaceTime the last,
Gotta go. I'm shopping.
or you're in the checkout line.
Yeah.
So it is timing, and but yeah, there's just a matter of information sharing
Hmm.
or instruction, like you said. My French lady friend. That sounds wrong.
Oh, no.
No,
David.
I was going to say madam, and I'm
No.
like, that's not
All
right.
of those things,
We'll call
no.
her Shirley.
No.
But with Shirley, she was very instruction and it was information, but it wasn't a conversation. And so I think that our exchange of information is really part of the problem. We don't know how to connect outside of sharing information. What else do you think goes into the difficulties?
Uh, I mean, I think it used to be the way partly just the way we lived our lives. We sat together more at dinners. There were more gatherings where
Yeah.
people would tell stories and listen to each other and go back and forth. I think We're more fast paced.
Yeah.
We don't sit down. Traditionally, most families don't sit down around the dinner table together. And that's never just about having food together. It's about the conversation that happens around the table and learning that the give and take of that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think we've lost sort of the modeling for that. Sorry. Um, and I think people just these days are given to explaining themselves or expressing their point of view
Yeah.
more than listening, perhaps
Yeah.
is part of, I mean, though that's a lot of things.
Well, I think that it's the echo chamber. Like, I want to talk with people that think the same way I do
Yeah.
versus let's get to know each other, and we might
Yeah.
totally disagree, but how fun would that be?
Yeah. Or I just want to be affirmed and
Yeah.
just in this conversation
Yeah.
to feel good about myself, feel that I'm clever.
There's also the oh shiny moments. We call it yeah, oh shiny. Like, you have short attention span. You're
Yeah.
distracted by things, and I see that in conversation a lot at the college and other places. That there's a short amount of time you have, kind of almost like an elevator
Yeah.
speech, and
You
then you're
have
on to the next
a
thing.
very short given time to get to catch somebody's attention in the conversation, and if you haven't captured it,
Yeah.
they're off to the next thing, which feels like it's a transactional thing, like you've gotta be entertaining or you've gotta have something of value, otherwise, they're off looking for the more important person to talk to.
Yeah, even if you're like at a party or at a gathering at a restaurant or something, there's a pressure. It feels like you have to talk to everyone. So you're talking to someone, but you're also scanning to see who the next person is,
Yeah.
and you're not in the moment. And I think the art of conversation is, can I be in the moment? And
Yeah.
so,
Well, I guess that's part of the question then, like, what are we in it for? What is the conversation for? What's the purpose of it?
yeah,
Because if it's to, just relay information or, something like that, then there's no point to stay in it longer than
yeah, I think it's about relationship. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what we're about here, and I think that's what it's about when we travel. We don't have life pressures for other things, and we have 3 hour to 5 hour meals
Mhm.
where we're just sitting at the table, and no one's rushing us, which helps.
Yeah.
But it's spending time together.
Yeah. So it's the connection.
It is the connection
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than the information. And it's an information age now. So we feel like we need information, and we move on from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, like, maybe we should talk about contexts too, because conversations can happen with a stranger in a
Yeah.
line, at the grocery store. They can happen with your acquaintances. Those ones where you like see somebody that you knew 5 years ago, and you make eye contact. And you're like, we have to talk now, and you're like, we don't have time to catch up on 5 years. What have you been doing with your life? And then you
Yeah.
say, oh, we should get together for lunch, and you both don't mean it, and
Yep.
and then you move on. So
That's
there's
right.
those, and then there's the ones you have with friends that might go a little deeper.
Yeah.
And then, there's the one-on-ones and there's the groups. So there's lots of different situations that the conversation happens in, and they all might look a little different.
And you need to practice all of them. So I think about in college, the stranger talking with strangers.
Yeah.
We were such weirdos. We had a game that we'd play maybe once a week, maybe every other week. It would be a competition to see who could keep someone on the phone the longest. And this was one of those handheld phones with the curly
Cord.
cord,
Yeah.
and so we would just
They would
call them.
dial a random number.
Yeah, and this was before caller ID. So
Right. So they had
they
no
had
idea who
no
was
idea.
calling. Back when we had to answer every call, because
Everybody had to answer.
it could be a telemarketer or it could be your mother. You never knew.
Yeah, and instead it was a college boy calling. But I would call, and we would all take turns, and usually it was couple minutes, and I managed to do a phone call for 45 minutes, and I had to end it because it just kept going. But it was
Yeah.
our practice was, how do you show interest? How do you engage people? And it was really a good skill set to have, of how to continue on and how to politely end a conversation. And it was easier than it would be nowadays, because nowadays it's caller ID and you can call back. That was like, they couldn't call back. And so It was just,
So what was your I'm just curious now, when you'd call this random number and somebody would answer, you don't know who they are, what would be your
yeah.
ruse? What would be your opening line, like, to engage them and not have them hang up right away?
Yeah, well, there would be like we started out today. There would be an attempt at a joke.
So you
That
just
would be
somebody to
one.
answer the phone, you just tell a
Yeah,
joke?
it's just like, hey, we're just calling to check up on everybody. Is your refrigerator running? And they would say yes. And it's like, well, you probably should go catch it. Uh, and if you like that, I could have more jokes. And sometimes people would want to hear more jokes. And then it's just like, what joke do you have? And
Who
um,
are did they ever ask, like, "Who are you?"
yeah, and I would say Joe Schmigel from Tennessee, and I'm just feeling kind of lonely and was hoping to have a laugh with somebody, or you could call and just say, you know, we're just trying to make people feel happy and wondering what it would take to help you feel a little bit more appreciated or happy today. And people would be just like, oh, that's weird. It's like, well, what's been happening in your life? And
So you started this therapy thing pretty early.
well, I didn't
You
know it
had
was
no
I didn't
idea.
know it was therapy, but it was asking good questions.
Mhm,
And a lot of it was it's just you had to crack the seal at the beginning.
mhm.
And if you could get them to talk, so that was when you knew you had a good conversation, if you could get the other person to talk. And the art of conversation in that was I wasn't trying to tell them anything. My whole goal was to spend time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it was competition. So there's
Right.
that.
That
I mean,
that
it's not a
that's all of
purely
it sounds right up your alley.
we did have a competition and all, but
Yeah.
it was the skill set was I really want to listen well
Mhm,
and hear what's going on because what they would say led to the next thing. There was kind of a first salvo to
mhm.
crack the seal. And then
Yeah.
after that, it was listening and responding.
Mhm.
And so that, yeah, I guess that did
Yeah.
get me into my profession. Um,
Yeah, well, it's just what comes naturally, I guess, is what makes sense, and I was the opposite of that when I was a teenager. I was, what they called shy, which really means just super self-conscious, and, for whatever reason, I was afraid to even call Domino's to order a pizza because I'd have to talk to somebody,
oh no, what would
like,
happen?
I don't know.
Okay.
They would I don't know. You'd have to say words to them and the
Yeah.
right words, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was scary. Well, maybe because the 4 years we lived in Africa, we didn't talk on phones. Like, I certainly never did,
No.
um, because we only had them for, I don't know, very specific purposes. I think there were phones between the homes where we
Hmm.
lived, but I mean,
He would just walk over,
yeah, yeah, we
go
walked
talk to
around and
somebody.
talked to people, so when we came back, I was a teenager when we came to the States, and it was you had to people called you to ask you out or to make plans or you had to call to order food or whatever, and that
Yeah.
was a whole new thing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's risky, right? I mean,
I guess, like, what's the risk though,
well,
really?
that's what I was trying to figure out because we didn't think about it that
Yeah,
way.
well, and it felt, I
But it's
guess,
identity, your
yes,
formation.
and I think I used to think that conversation was about putting yourself forward, like, having something interesting to say and, I don't know, commenting on some political events or current
Yeah.
events or movies. And I didn't know any of that stuff. I was
Mm,
disengaged from, I didn't watch TV. I didn't know anything about the culture. So maybe I felt sort of behind in knowing how to relate to what people were talking about. That
yeah.
might have been what sort of held me back when I was that age. But when I learned that a good conversation was not about having all these sparkling things to say, it
Yeah.
was really about asking the other person a good question that kept them talking,
Yeah.
and then it goes really well, and it's not like I heard this thing from somebody who talked about public speaking and saying, "Don't think of yourself as being under a spotlight, but more as a lighthouse." I think that's the word they use, so that you're shining the light on the other person,
Hmm.
not thinking you're just under a spotlight, because it's terrifying thinking of being alone on stage with a spotlight
Yeah.
shining on you.
But
And
but it's important to have both, like two lighthouses talking to each other is really good because otherwise it becomes a one-way
right.
relationship, and
Yeah.
that's not good conversation either. So if we're both entering in of wanting to shine light on each other, that's going to be interesting. If it's only one way
Right, but
after a
then you
while.
also it has to go both ways because if the other person is a good conversationalist, they're asking you questions. So there's that you it's sort of something you can't really teach. It's sort of a balance that you have to learn
Yeah.
of the back and
The
forth.
give and take. Well,
Yeah.
we have a couple of friends in our life that are really good at that. They have dinner parties or we go out for get togethers, and they know how to bring out people sharing as well as they're good storytellers. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of a combination of they're able to tell stories and share their life, but they know the timing of it
Right.
and how to bring others into those stories to tell their stories.
Right, because you don't wanna share with somebody who's not reciprocating, who's just not telling anything about themselves.
Yeah.
If when you get vulnerable and share things about how you think about things or just a personal story, there's gotta be some give and take. So
Yeah.
it's also being able to share without dominating,
Yeah.
without going on too long about something or going too deep too fast with somebody. That can also be like a conversation ender,
That's right.
you know?
Can I tell you about this problem that I've been having? You're like, I just met you.
I asked how you are, but I didn't really mean.
Well, and that's a cultural thing, right?
Mhm.
Like when we travel internationally, we ask, how are you? And people expect a 20-minute conversation. Where in the States, how are you is hello.
Yeah, it's just part of the conversation. You don't really answer that. You
Yeah.
always say fine.
But I think knowing the
Oh,
cultural differences can be important. One of the things you said I thought was interesting. When we had the old telephones, I remember calling girls' homes and the dad answer,
mhm.
and I'm not going to lie, I hung up a couple times,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
tried calling back again, and he'd be like, "Young man, you either better talk to me or you're not going to talk to my daughter." What was it like at your house when boys would call? Because that was my side was anxiety. So when you're talking about anxiety on the phone, that's what it brought me back to
Yeah,
of feeling
yeah.
vulnerable.
Well, because, we have to explain the olden days to people when
Oh,
there was,
that's right.
one house phone sometimes, and it was in a public area. Ours, when we came back to the States, was in kind of our dining, like our kitchen and eating
Yeah,
area. So
ours was
it's
in the
like
kitchen
where
too.
everybody is.
Yep.
And so if you called somebody, your siblings, your parents are all listening to your end of the conversation. Or if you have another line, it's attached to the same phone call. So sometimes people could pick up a receiver in another room and be listening to both ends of the conversation
Yeah.
without you knowing it.
Yeah.
So it's never private,
No.
which is also interesting how that affects the way we talk and how we feel about what we're saying.
Yeah. I think it goes to maybe why we're not good conversationalists because we had to navigate lots of dynamics in the conversation
Mhm.
that now you have your own phone. Like we can all be sitting in the same room and I can text you where the kids, we're having a conversation and the kids aren't involved in it at all. And so the modeling isn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we should move on to
Well,
the,
I mean, so what do we want to look for in the art of the conversation? Because there's definitely an art to it, right? Like
yeah.
if there was a science to it, you could say, well, spend 2 minutes introducing yourselves and then, you could break it down. But I feel like there's an art, which means it can look different for different people, different situations. But there's some of it that's just intuitive that you can learn
Yeah.
and try, and it takes practice. And sometimes it doesn't go well. Like Annika in her art with painting, she'll sometimes say, sometimes you just have to paint over what you just did
Yeah.
and start again, and that's okay. It's learning that, it's trial and error, and it's,
Mhm.
um
And I think it goes to a sense of self, right? Like your worth isn't how well this conversation goes. Your
mhm.
worth isn't how good your painting is. It's the effort that goes into it. And that's a hard thing. You have to be in a good space to realize I'm going to put myself out here and I'm okay with however it goes.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not okay, but I can survive however it
I can
goes.
live with it and laugh about it if it ends weirdly, like
Yeah.
as things do. Like we tell our kids, like we have, and this took me years, but just being comfortable with embracing the awkward moments
Yep.
and knowing those happen and being okay with it and laughing with about it, not perseverating on it for weeks later, going, oh, I should have said. I mean, I have stayed up at night sometimes thinking about ways I should have responded to things, and I think that never completely goes away.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wish you had done a conversation differently, but I think the more we engage in it and the more we get comfortable with the twists and turns of awkward silences and okay silences, as that
Hmm.
being the empty space being part of the conversation sometimes, the more we get comfortable with, you know, continuing to try with strangers or have more meaningful conversations with our friends.
Yeah, and it's repetitions. You
Yeah.
need a lot of repetitions because what you were just talking about, there's so many pieces to conversations. They're like reading the room. Being able to
Yeah.
tell, are you still with me or do I need, and even like for us in the
Yeah.
podcast of knowing how to non-verbally and verbally cue each other and be responsive to each other
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice.
Let's talk about that, reading the room,
Yeah.
because I think some people are born with that sort of sensitivity to how engaged somebody else is, and they just feel that. Other people, it takes a lot more learning to read
Yeah.
the room. I think as a doula and as a therapist, that's just a skill that we have to, maybe we already had to some degree, but we've had to really hone
Yeah.
because you really have to pay attention to the small nonverbals. And I feel like I've gotten good at noticing that. You just notice a slight restlessness in people or just things you can't really necessarily put a finger, or their eyes are flicking away when it's
Yeah.
just time to end. Like when I'm with a family after a birth, people always say, "Oh, how long do you stay after the baby's born?" I'm like, "Until it's time for me to go."
Yeah.
Because like there's sometimes I can tell they still need me to answer questions, or they're still comfortable with me being in the room. There's other times I can tell they're ready for privacy, and they
Hmm.
don't say it. Nobody ever says it's time for you to go now, but you look for those small things. And in conversation, I think it's similar, where you might be talking and you feel like they're still engaging, but if you notice things that, they're checking their watch, or they're reaching for their phone, or their body's starting to turn away, where you're
Yeah.
like, this will be a better conversation if it ends now rather than them having to try to disengage.
Yeah, there's also the summary. Well, this has been really a good time together, right?
Like the
There's a
Midwest
summer.
goodbye when
Yeah,
you say
yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
5 different, "Well, this has been fun."
Yeah, thanks for
Well,
having us over. And for me, I think you're right. Like, I know I learned to be a good conversationalist because I had to watch myself on videotape
mm,
reading or not reading the right cues. And it was so humbling because there's so much going on that we
mm.
don't attend
So what
to.
did you learn that you saw that you didn't know
Well,
when
the
you were in
first
the
that I was losing hair. The first thing of watching a video of
Yeah.
yourself is you're very mindful of your own body. And
Yes.
so just
Yeah.
how needing to be careful with, like we joked about personal space, but
Mhm.
needing to be mindful of personal space and people's comfort level. And you usually can get a sense by the feel of their bodies separate from yours. I mean, you're
Mhm.
not feeling their body,
No.
but the presence
Yeah, yeah.
and sometimes I had, when I was a bad conversationalist, I had an agenda.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh, my supervisor said, say this, say this, say this. And the conversation was going and it would just be awkwardly.
And then you'd be sort of
Anyway,
interjecting
yeah.
the things that you thought you had to
Yeah,
say.
it would be like there was a hard brake, like you had, you pulled the emergency brake on the car and it slides, and then you're like, okay, and now this. So I had to learn kind of segue and how to move, listening for breaks to kind
Mhm.
of give, and how to end a conversation well. Like when I was a young clinician, my sessions went really long.
Mm.
Because it was like, oh, they keep talking and I want to be respectful. And
Mhm.
so it's like, uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. I think we've talked about that and maybe we can talk next week. Oh, yeah. And just keep going.
Mhm.
So now I stand up. I give very overt
Give
cues
your own cues
that the
too.
conversation is done, of
Yeah.
like a wrap up summary. Oh, nope. I'll stand up and we'll be talking and they're still sitting there. And then I'll move towards the door. and then I'll open the door.
Mhm.
And so there's these cues that you can give. Those are
Mhm.
pretty overt in the therapy room,
Mhm.
but non-verbally in a conversation, you could get a sense of, yeah, the glancing away, the kind of shifting body, or
Yeah,
saying,
or if they're not done, but you need to be,
yeah,
you starting to give some of those cues, like the summary, like
yeah,
just being able to say, even abruptly sometimes, "This has been really great, but I have something waiting for me now. I've gotta go. It's really been great to talk to you."
yeah.
And
And
that's okay.
and it's the amount of trust you have built in the relationship. With newer relationships, I'm much more gentle with, like, my kids. It'll just be like, oh, all right, we're done. Or people that come over to the house, we joke about this, but what do I do when when the evening's over?
Well, it's especially when we have students that have a later time, in their body clocks,
Yeah, they
they
like
get
staying up
active.
late.
Yeah. So if we get to a time when it's kind of you're getting tired or it's getting closer to when we would have gone to bed, and they're not, you're making a lot of overt sign. You're getting up and washing dishes or putting plates away,
Yeah,
and
collecting
they're
the
still just
plates,
very relaxed and lounged around. And then you have to
which is
start saying,
lovely, which is
it
lovely.
is lovely, and we do love that, but every good thing has to come to an end. So sometimes you'll just say, "Well, I'm gonna get my pajamas on," and you start going upstairs like it's that.
Yeah, or
Or it's
turning off the
turning off the
lights.
lights. Generally going around and turning off the lamps will do it. Like, "Hey, what's going on?" Well, you didn't get my first 10 clues,
Yeah,
so
so I'll be very direct, but that's where I have a good relationship. And I think it goes
mhm.
back to, is it a stranger, is it an acquaintance, is it a friend, is it a family, is it a close, like my close friends are like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'll just say it directly. I'm like, I'm done with this conversation. We can talk another time. I got to go.
yeah.
And it's refreshing, right? But if I said that to a stranger, I'm a jerk.
Yeah, well, and sometimes with a stranger or an acquaintance, don't you feel like at a social event or something, you both get stuck where you can tell you're done and they're done,
Yeah.
but you're both like continuing and it's getting a little bit more obvious that you both want to be done, but you haven't found a good way to exit.
Yeah. Well, you usually just say, hey, do you want to go out on the dance floor? And that ends it. Because no one wants to dance with me.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about dancing situations, but
No. Well, I
yeah.
mean, it's really awkward if it's just the two of you in a room and then say, hey, you want to hit the dance floor?
Yeah, yeah.
That
Oh my
ends it.
goodness, you've got a lot of doozies
I
today.
have a lot of fun ones to, oh, yeah, I might have a little judgment issues. I do like, I think the thing that is also important to practice is silent. Like you mentioned, silence.
Yeah, the empty space.
It's hard
People
to
are
do.
afraid of empty space.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be. You have helped me get comfortable with the idea of empty space because you're not afraid of awkwardness.
Yeah. It's a gift. It's a gift.
It's a gift. I mean, it really is.
You do what you know.
Well, and silence, there's a lot of different ways to have silence. Silence can be really awkward depending on what happened right before it.
Yeah.
It can be really comfortable with people you know, or when it's needed, or when something that you say would be worse than silence, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that I think there's definitely an art to knowing when silence is okay and when you should have silence. Yeah.
Yes, I think that.
I see what you're doing
Yeah.
there.
Well, it's when the other person turns inward, it's
Mhm.
usually a good time to let it sit rather than fill the space. And one of the things we talk about is filling the room or filling the space usually is an anxious response. And
Yeah.
so there's a sense of, if the other person is turning inward, can I sit there with them?
Mhm.
And usually, if I can't, it's my own anxiety more than anything going on with them. Of,
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable, and so I'm just like, "Da, da, 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 look at here," and want to be
Yeah.
entertaining because it's gone to a painful place.
Mhm.
So being able to realize, I think, with that, it's not just reading their cues, but understanding what's going on for you or for
Mhm.
me. That, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Can I just slow down
Yeah.
and be able to kind of attend to myself, to be able to give that space for the other?
Mhm.
Can also be a good conversation piece.
Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with reading the room.
Yeah.
Like being able to tell what's going on here, and is it best if I just leave a little open space? If somebody's trying to recall something, even just that short silence while they're thinking about something, sometimes we just have to jump in
Mm-hmm.
and fill the space. Or while you're thinking about that, let me just tell this story,
Yeah.
and that doesn't really allow for that connection or for them to tell their piece.
I had a conversation one time early in our marriage. It was back in the 90s, and I was talking to this person, and it was a meaningful conversation, but there was a little dead space, and I
Mm-hmm.
got nervous, and it's just like, well, okay, and just left. And then later on, they let me know of like, oh, that was hurtful because I thought we were having a good conversation, and then you just ended it,
Mm-hmm.
which I appreciated them telling me, but I was awkward, uncomfortable. I thought maybe I went and asked a question that was too personal. It was around
Mm-hmm.
grief. And so it was like, oh, and just bailed. So I think there can be a painful process in not
Mm.
letting silence be there.
So you kind of misunderstood what was happening with the silence.
Yeah. And I thought, oh no, I've said something wrong and I've hurt them. So I'm going to back out of this,
Mm-hmm.
where it was better to lean in.
Mm.
So, are other skills that we need to have.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about that. We talked around this, but the curiosity piece is a huge part. So reading the room and then knowing how to ask a good question, not the yes and no questions, but to engage someone. Like I'm sure on your random stranger phone calls, if you just ask a bunch of yes, no questions, it would end pretty fast.
Correct.
But if you ask open end, which is great, like with our kids too, when they come home from, did you have a good day at school? No. You
Mhm.
can end a conversation really fast when it doesn't allow for a more detailed sort of response.
Yeah.
So I've noticed you now when we meet people who we don't know, instead of asking, like, what do you do for a living, which can be awkward depending on what stage of life people are in,
Mhm.
saying, what do you do with your time? Or,
Yeah.
something like that, that leaves it open to how they want to answer it, but might lead into what their vocation is, or, if they're retired, what are you doing
Oh,
now?
you noticed that.
I did notice that.
Huh. Well, but it is open ended, and we talk about how questions rather than direct, close ended. Of how'd your day go, or how was it having that conversation? It still can be fine,
Hmm.
but it opens it up. Or my favorite questions
Hmm.
are, uh, how do Tara, how do you think the kids are doing? It's a circular question. It's asking you about your perception of other things, and that's a little less personal than how are you doing.
Hmm.
Um, and so you can ask kind of about things and kind of ask their opinion of other things that open up opportunities to go deeper sometimes.
Yeah, I think people get a little fatigued with sort of the typical list of questions when you're meeting people, like, are you married? What do you do?
Mhm.
What else do people
How
ask?
many toes do you
Like, how many
have?
come on. What's your favorite color?
That's right.
All the favorite our kids hated those questions. The what's your favorite?
Yeah.
What's your favorite, what's your favorite baseball team? They felt like it left out all the other things.
Yeah.
So
They didn't want to
it
take a
could just be
position.
like, who do you follow sports? Who do you follow?
Yeah.
Um, or tell me about a good game you watched recently, or something like that.
How much do you make for a living? There's lots of
You're going right to
there's a
the
common question.
scratch the record.
That's right. For some reason, people just walk away. I don't know. But yeah, being creative. And
Creative, yeah. Creative and curious, not clever. There we go.
oh, wow. I love that. Yeah, because I think sometimes back to your teenage life of you were trying to be clever. You wanted to kind of look good rather than, oh, how
Well,
can I be
that you just
curious?
interpreted that way.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was for all of us. That as teenagers, our
Well, just
conversation is awkward because we're worried about acceptance.
yeah, and I didn't wanna look dumb.
Yeah,
So I guess that's the same thing.
yeah,
But you just don't wanna look like, I don't know, I didn't know the right way to order a pizza. I don't know, if he's going to ask me a question I don't know the answer to,
Yeah.
I'll look dumb.
Well, and you did a lot of preparation. I mean, you didn't want, I mean, our early conversations, you would do research so that we'd have shared things to talk about.
Hmm.
And that's good conversation. That's not long-term relationship kind
Hmm.
of conversation. But early on,
Yeah.
it's, oh, can we have a shared topic that we can talk about?
Yeah. Finding connecting points without making it your personal sort of platform.
Yeah. Oh, have you ever had that where someone asks you a question? It's really what they want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And that's uncomfortable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on from that one. But that happens a lot. So, hey, what are your kids doing nowadays? Or what college did your kids
Yeah,
go
and you
to?
answer that like briefly and then they go into, "Oh, guess what? Johnny just got into Yale." And then
Yeah.
they go on about it. It's
Yeah.
just kind of the prompt for they're asking you a question, but they're waiting for it to bounce back.
Yeah.
And
And,
that kind of goes with the don'ts. Like some don'ts is, I mean, everybody knows you don't want to be in a conversation with a dominating person. So
uh-huh.
so try not to be dominating. Um, or debating or disappearing. If we're going to go with
Oh,
alliterations,
wow.
which I love alliterate, it just naturally happens for me. I'm
I
sorry.
just get distracted now. They're all D's, but
Or
I don't remember
distracting.
any of them.
Yeah, so dominating, like obviously, we say obviously, but it can be easy to do if we
Yeah. Well, let me show you how to dominate. You just interrupt and talk over somebody.
right, or if anybody asks about birth, I might just you might have to stop me. So knowing when like, okay, that's enough. This is not a conversation if
Mm.
you're just monologuing
Yeah,
with someone.
too much data
Yes.
for the
Yes.
D word.
Yeah, there you go.
Too much data is dominating the
That's right.
conversation
That's right.
or the dialogue, dominating the dialogue.
Oh my goodness.
I've joined in.
Yeah,
I'm
I like
playing.
it. It's good. It's good.
And I think knowing when to, other don'ts, um, don't make it about yourself. So that kind of piece that we talked about
Yeah.
in
Like
conversation.
sharing for the point of connection, not for just, I just want to tell you everything I think about this thing.
Yeah. I like to think about, can I ask two questions for every one that I'm answering? And it doesn't always happen that way, but that's the goal for me
Mm-hmm.
to help me because I like to talk. I mean, that's why I'm a professor. I can talk 6 hours without breathing.
I know.
You're happy I go out of the house to talk sometimes. But it's, can I ask two things before I share one?
Hmm.
Helps balance that out. And if we're both doing it, then it's a good flow. I
Yeah.
think being gracious is another
Mm.
thing. So if I
Yeah.
get upset by you talking about something I disagree with, that's going to change our
Yeah.
conversation because the art of conversation isn't about persuasion. It's not about debating.
Yeah.
It's about curiosity and connection.
Hmm.
And I think a lot I see politically, religiously, it's about me convincing you of my point
Yeah.
rather than connecting.
Right. So not convincing, or what was the other C word you said?
Connection,
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yes. Yes. Those are the do's. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the do's. Today I'm having a hard time with the don'ts.
That's good.
I hope so. One of the other things is humor can be helpful, but it
Yeah.
can also be a don't.
Well, yeah, I think that's also
I've learned that the hard way.
yeah. Well, humor is tricky because it's got the context matters, and the kind of joke you tell matters, and the
Yeah.
receptiveness of the people you're with matters. And for you, often you try to tell your jokes that go well in your classroom, but in some different cultural contexts, it just doesn't land.
Yeah.
And so it's figuring that out, and sometimes making a mistake. You know, being
Yeah.
okay with that.
Did I have one this trip? I'm
I'm
trying to
trying to
think.
remember if you did recently. I don't think you tried real hard with the jokes.
No, I've grown out of
We were
that.
more distracted with taking care of the
The
baby
baby.
and being
Yeah.
with our kids.
Yeah. But I do have this spiritual gift of agitation.
Yeah.
And so I like a conversation where we're right on the edge. of being
Where
appropriate.
people are a little confused.
Yeah, or saying something that could have multiple meanings and they don't quite know which way to go. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested in whichever way you go. I'm going with you. It's kind of inviting like this. There's 4 doors here. Which door do you want to take?
I feel like maybe I need to relax on this, but I feel like a lot of times when we are out together
Oh,
at
I know
things
it drives me
where
crazy.
you're doing this, what you just talked about, keeping people on the edge, where they're a little bit confused about whether you were joking or not joking.
Hmm.
I go around and do cleanup afterwards
I know
and
because
explain things.
I let it just sit there and
Yeah,
you're like, well, what he actually means is I'm like, come on, Tara, this is fun.
I'm not as comfortable with discomfort as you are. Especially I'm comfortable with our friends who know us.
Yeah, but
When you play
strangers,
with them and leave them wondering,
yeah,
I'm like, David, it's just
yeah, that's him.
But with strangers where they're just really
They
they're really
don't know.
confused, I always feel like I have to come in and explain things.
So why is that?
I don't know. I like people to well, I speak to be understood.
Oh, and I speak to create a little curiosity.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense. I get it.
Yeah.
And I a lot of times you probably save me from awkward future
I would like to think
conversations.
so.
I'm gonna lean into that
Or
of like I
misunderstandings.
probably should say thank you.
Because it's one of the human needs is to be known and understood, right? So I'm uncomfortable when people have this impression that you've
Yeah.
left behind that's not accurate.
Yes, but growth happens in those uncomfortable, we call it optimal frustration.
I totally get that concept, but in these in these contexts, sometimes I feel like it's not confusion that leads to growth. It's confusion that leaves a taste of misunderstanding.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a beautiful thing of our relationship. Like you care what people think about me.
Well, to a degree.
Yeah,
I've left you to your own
I know
devices
it's been
sometimes.
it's been wonderful,
Mhm.
and I've seen you in public speaking and other places, go to places where I'm like, uh-oh,
Really?
and oh yeah, I thought
What
I
has
kind of get a sense of like, oh, I want to make this okay, and I let you just
really?
kind of run. Yeah, it's
Do you
beautiful.
have an example?
I think it was that graduation party.
I
Uh,
really shocked you with that,
you
didn't I?
did. You blew my socks off because you all know Tara is this very wonderful conversationalist from the podcast, but you don't like public speaking or haven't in the
No,
past.
I have no.
And we were at a place where I was giving a little,
Especially spontaneous.
yeah,
I can work myself up to something if I prepare well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this was a spontaneous moment. It was a beautiful moment. You connected with everyone, but it was shocking because you're like, I would like to say something. I'm like, what?
I got to
What?
surprise you every now and then.
Oh, it is so good. And I think that's another art of the conversation of not being predictable.
Mhm.
And you have really grown into that. And it's been a lot of fun because it creates new space and a little bit of shock, but you do it in appropriate ways.
Well, contextually for that too, I think it's because I'm at a place, and honestly, it's from feeling so supported by you. I couldn't do that if you ridiculed me afterwards. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's a safety thing too.
Yeah.
It's like feeling like you're surprised, but you're not gonna be like, "Why did you do that?"
No,
You're
I
like,
giggle.
good for you." And so I think to be creative and to take risks, we need to be in a place where we're with people who back us up.
Yeah. Yeah, that you feel safe. You can try that. And
Mhm.
if it doesn't go well, it's something to laugh and learn from
Yeah.
rather than berate each other. And I think that's the thing of in the art of conversation, do you have a safe that conversation might not be a safe place,
Mhm.
but do you have a safe place where you can be
Mhm.
grounded? I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And after 33 years, it's nice that we're just grounded together, grinded down together.
All of those
All of
things.
those
Yeah.
things. Well, how do you end a conversation well?
That is a key. I think that's one of the reasons people struggle, honestly, with the face-to-face thing because you don't know, like, how am I gonna know when it's the end?
Yeah.
How do I get out of it if I get into it? I mean, I think there is an art to nicely, gracefully ending a conversation,
Yeah.
whether it's a deep one or it's just a random, one with a stranger. So, I mean, I think we did talk about the
Yeah. I just
cues.
turn off the lights.
Yeah, you just get up
Yeah.
and turn off the lights. You don't have
That's not
you don't
gentle.
have as much of a problem with the abrupt sort of ending, but I think
No.
people struggle with, you don't want to offend, you want to listen long enough that it's appropriate, but you also don't want to prolong it if it's past its point, its
Yeah.
prime.
Yeah.
It's not going as well.
Yeah.
Or if it veers off into dangerous territory where it does become a debate, if it's a group situation and somebody's dominating or it's getting into a heated argument or political dangerous territory or
Mm-hmm.
something, when it's a group, I think I don't have a problem removing myself from the
Yeah.
group if it's going to continue, and I feel like I'm not able to contribute to this, or it's moving into territory I'm uncomfortable with. Either people are, mocking somebody, or they're whatever it is that's happening. It feels like I don't want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't have a problem saying thanks, guys. Or just walking away
Yeah.
if it continues. But it's a little bit more difficult and tricky and nuanced if you're in just two or three or one-on-one situation.
Yeah.
So then I think it's kind of wrapping it up with those sort of summaries or
Mm-hmm.
asking hey, just to finish,
Yeah.
I have a last question for you before I got to go.
Which
Or
that cues it up that
it
this is the
cues,
ending
yeah.
is
So we're still going
coming.
to talk a little bit, but
Yep.
I'm just letting you know, like I've got limited time, or I just want to, I want to hear this last part of your story.
Yeah. It reminds me of when we were parenting young kids. We'd give them a 5-minute warning before
Yeah.
we were going to leave.
Yeah.
But it was queuing up, and I think the same idea. So as a parent, parents are good at this. You need to give your kid a little bit of a warning because transitions can be hard. You do this in conversation of like, yeah, this has been great. Was there anything else that we needed to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing when I'm
Yeah.
in a meeting or with people. It's just like, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. Anything else that we need to say before we wrap up? And there's ways that
signals that we're prepping, we're winding down. I know. I think that is a good point too, is that maybe we're not so good at anymore as signaling.
Yeah.
I think when you said that, I thought about, like with our kids, that was a big part of what I think went well when we were good at, helping them understand when things were going to start, when things were going to end. Or I would cue them up before we go in the grocery store. We'd have a pep talk in the car about how this is going to go,
Yep.
what's going to happen if you keep asking for stuff, where you're going to walk or sit in the cart or whatever, like just setting expectations.
Yeah.
And then signaling like, okay, this is our last part, and we can pick one thing and then we're going to go. Just that kind of signaling in a conversation too. Like I say with road rules, how we talked about our annoying things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could avoid a lot of problems interpersonally if we just communicated well with each other about where we're going, what's happening next, right? So I do think that's a good point about conversation, of just being able to end it or start it well too, like introduce yourself. People don't do introductions well.
Yeah.
I think we've lost that too. Like you come in and you feel, I've even had that with you. I think we've had some times where
this is a good story.
We run into, you want me to tell the story of when we ran into your boss?
Yeah,
and I thought
yeah.
It was a homeless person.
Yeah.
This was ages ago at somewhere that nobody will know what we're talking about. But it's hard when
like 30 years ago.
Yeah. So starting a conversation, you feel not, on your best foot if you don't know who you're speaking to, because you need to know context of what are the other relationships here? Who am I speaking to? I think that's a good point for starting, especially with a group conversation. Like if somebody joins in, it's a really gracious thing to say, "Oh, welcome in, David. This is Jacob. This is Rachel. These are,
But we have lives where we have confidentiality.
Yeah, so we run into people in community that we have had working relationships with that need to be kept confidential sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's tricky if sometimes we are out in public and somebody walks by or makes eye contact or says hello first or comes up and says, "Oh, hey, David, haven't seen you in a while." And I'm looking at you for cues of like, is this a friend from church? Is this a friend from work? Is this a past client or what's happening here? And should I just melt away, or do you want to introduce me? It's kind of a
we have
tricky thing.
And we have introductions is yes, let's have a conversation. No introduction, just
or if
melt
you say,
away.
Hey, this is my wife Tara, this is my colleague so and so. It's really, really helpful for everybody involved.
There was one time.
So this one time, what had happened was, so this was ages ago,
and our
children were very, very small, and we were shopping with them before Christmas for our St. Nick's Day, because when they were little, we'd give them each a little bit of money, and they would each shop for each other, like secretly. We'd take them on little, like, away from each other. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's the context. But while we were there, somebody came up and started talking to you.
Yeah.
And this person was quite disheveled, and I didn't know the context, and I was waiting for you to tell me who this is, but they looked like they knew you pretty well.
Yeah.
And I assumed it was someone who wasn't doing well. And all the children were there. So I kind of gathered the kids and just didn't say anything, just walked away around a corner so that you could have a private time to talk to this person.
Yeah.
And then, we stayed kind of around the corner out of sight and just looked in a store or something. And and it was kind of a long conversation too. And you usually don't engage with someone who is a past client for that long, like in public. Usually it's like, hello, see you again sometime soon. And you came around and said, why didn't you come talk? That was my boss. I wanted to introduce you. And I was like, I had no idea.
And I didn't use the signaling well.
There was no signaling right away. So I assumed it meant we should be anonymous.
Yeah. And so it's important, right? The signaling.
It's really important.
And sometimes I forget that, or forget who you know, who you don't know, and likewise. And so we have to.
It's always good to assume. We just need to reintroduce, even if somebody knows each other. Oh, hey, do you know so-and-so? This is...
And it makes them feel welcomed. It makes them feel connected on both directions. And so that's a growing edge. I just dive right into the deep end.
Yeah, well, even if it's just a one-on-one, when you see somebody who you know their face and you know each other, you're about to have a conversation. Maybe you ran into each other at the farmer's market or something, and you're like, I know this person.
Yeah.
I don't remember their name. So the startings, I would always be just terrified to admit I didn't remember their name. So you start this conversation while in the back of your head, this whole motor is running of trying to place them in context and remember the name. And then you're not engaging very well in the actual conversation. And so I think it's better to just say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking out. Can you just remind me of your name? Even though you don't want to insult somebody or feel like you forgot who they are. But I think it's better to start out like, oh yeah, of course. So I'm so sorry. I mixed your face up with somebody else, or I'm just, it's out of context.
Yeah.
So,
but I think that, like you're saying, that's a really good point to the whole kind of art is how do you make it about connection? Mm-hmm. So this art of conversation is about connecting, whether it's an awkward start or a reintroduction, and it's not about information or performance or kind of the view and value of yourself. If you can do that, that's the majority of the work for the success of being a conversationalist. So we're hoping you'll go out and have conversations.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself to us so we can avoid the awkwardness. And we'll chat for a little bit, and then I'll turn off the lights and we'll go.
Yeah. Enjoy a good conversation, maybe over coffee or even with a stranger, and enjoy connection maybe that you didn't have before.